Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. For today's episode we will officially start, I guess, the basic sewing school that I am really excited to share with you, and the first episode will be how to make a skirt pattern. So what I envision this series to be basically is a step-by-step guide in order for you to learn how to make your own custom-sized patterns. And I went to university to study fashion design, and sewing and pattern making was a big part of that, which I am very grateful for, and I will try my best to try to teach you, I guess, everything that I learned. I went ahead and actually made a size chart, which looks like this, which has all the information that you need and all the calculations that you need to make in order to be able to make a pattern. I put a link to that PDF in the description box down below. Obviously you don't have to use mine, but you need to have some paper at hand because you will need to make calculations, and a size chart like this is pretty handy, and I put as well the formula for everything in there. And before we dive into how to make a skirt, I just quickly want to explain how this size chart works and why you need it and why the heck there's German on there. Okay, let's go. So just so that you know what this chart contains, I always have the abbreviation and the explanation of the measurement basically on the left side. Then, because I went to a German-speaking university and I learned everything in German, I only have the abbreviations for the German words. That's why I put a second column in there with the German words for an explanation purpose, I guess. Obviously, it's not necessary to know those. It's just an explanation that confusion is wiped out, and that is basically why it's in there. And then in the third row, at least in the secondary measurements, I put a formula. So pattern making is based on a few measurements that you take from the body of your customer or yourself or whoever you're making the garment for, and those are used to calculate all the other secondary measurements. So apart from two other secondary measurements, you can calculate everything. All of the sheet is in centimeters. I'm sorry for everybody who's not using the metric system. I get so confused with inches and stuff like that. That's why I only just put it in centimeters. I hope that's okay, and you can also just measure it in centimeters because yeah, I just couldn't. I don't get it. So please apologize that. Yeah, that's basically it, and I will take you through all the calculations step by step right now. Okay, so this is the PDF that is linked down below. This is the updated version that I have right now, and it also includes a bunch of charts that can be helpful for you. This one here is just an average size chart that you can use for orientation, but don't have to, but I thought it would be nice to include this. Then these charts are just some charts that you need for your calculations up here in the front. If we start our size chart right now, there are main measurements that you need to measure. This is just the height. In my case, it's 168. The bust, the waist, the hip, and then there's just a standard sleeve length of 60 that I just put in there for it to be complete. Then you have a few other measurements. You just need those for different other calculations. So a fourth of my height I put in here, then half of my bust, a quarter, and an eighth. Same to the waist, a half, and then we just need a quarter, and then for your hip you just need half of that. Once we have this, those are basically all the measurements that you take, 2 more down here, but these will be used to calculate everything else. So if we move on to the secondary measurements, you need to refer to the charts on page 2, and you can see it right here for the back, neck to bust length. The formula says 1/8 of bust plus chart 1. So this is based on your bust, how much you need to add in that formula. As I have a bust width of 86, I refer to the first, which is 11 centimeters for the back, neck to bust. And this is what I put in here, just 11. So I would take 1/10 of my bust plus 11 centimeters, which is 19.6. Then here you can just take the 1/4 of your height that you already have up here. Then for your crotch depth, you add these two, so back neck to bust and back neck to waist, together, which comes out in my case to 61.6. Here the neck width is 1/20th of your bust. Then we come to another number that you need to measure, which is the breast point to neck to other breast point. And I measured this is just 71 in my case. Then this one, the breast point to neck to other breast point 2, is the actual number that we need for constructing a pattern. So this is 1/2 of your measured point minus your neck width. So that is 31.2 in my case. Then here waist to neck to waist is another length that you measure. And that is used for the next number that we actually need for the pattern making, which is 1/2 of this number minus the neck width, which is in my case 4.3. So that comes out to 47.7. And these two are the actual numbers that we need, not these two. These are just for calculation. Moving on to the lower table down here, this gets a little bit more tricky just because you will add some fullness into your pattern just for it to sit correctly and to have more space and movement. This number here is based on what type of garment you want to make, and it says right here refer to chart 3, which is this one here. And you have a few examples on the left side, and then the additions that you need to put in the respective spots. And these are just orientations that you can use. For my part, I'm gonna use 2 centimeters in addition. That is the normal tight base pattern that you make in the very beginning. We will continue down here for other patterns, but at the moment we just use 2. That means you have all of your additions already written out. So first of all, you put in your fullness, which is 2, and these numbers will be coming from this chart, and these should add up together 2 centimeters. If they don't, you just make them add up. So in this case, it's 1.7 centimeters, and you need to add 0.3 millimeters into this whole bunch again. So I would do it like so. I wouldn't put 0.3, I would put in 0.5. Then for your armhole width, I wouldn't put in 0.6, I would put in 0.5, and then for your breast width I would put in 1, and all of these add up together to 2. And then you can make the calculations, which is in this case for the back width 1/8 of your bust plus 5.5 plus 0.5, which is 16.75. Then here for your armhole width, you do 1/8 of your bust plus whatever a chart says in the back again. So please refer to chart 1. That is again based on your bust In my case, I refer to the first row for the AD, the armhole width, and that says minus 1.5 centimeters. So I put this in here. So the whole calculation is 1/8 of your bust minus 1.5 plus 0.5, and that comes out to 9.75. Then here for your breast width, you also need to refer to chart 1. So this is also based on your bust, which is 1/4 of your bust minus, in my case, minus 4 centimeters. And then you basically calculate 1/4 of your bust minus 4 plus 1. And that's 18.5. And now down here, just to be sure you did everything correct, 1/2 of your bust, which we calculated already, is 43, plus your fullness, which is 2. So this comes out to 45, and you can do quickly the math. If you add up these three numbers, it will come out to 45. And this is basically how you make sure that you did everything correctly. Now we have a few numbers over here. Those refer to the ones on their left. So you need 1/3 of whatever is written in this spot here, which is in my case 5.5. And this number here also refers to 1/3 of your back width, or 2/3 of your armhole width, 1/3, 1/4 of your armhole width, because those are numbers that we'll need later on for pattern making. So 2/3 of 9.75 is 6.5, 1/3 is 3.3, and 1/4 is 2.5. You can do your math for your numbers. Now if we turn the page around, there's just a small last calculation that we have to do, which is calculating the shoulder width. It says right here, shoulder width from chart 2. Chart 2 is this one down here. You can either look on this chart, or you can go to this chart and go to the very bottom column. Those are the same numbers, and as you can see here, those are coming from a mass measurement, and the average is taken from that basically. And if you're unsure what number you need to take for your specific pattern, you can compare those measurements that you took with this chart. You will find all of those in here, and then you'll know what shoulder width you need to take for your specific pattern. I will take 12.1, so a small, because that's what I usually do, or what I usually wear. And then you write that in here, and then you take the fullness of your back width, which, if you remember, is 0.5. So your back width, and then the fullness is 0.5. You write that in here, and then you just have an additional fullness of 1 centimeter just for purposes of movement. You add all of this up, which comes out to 13.6. And this is the shoulder width that you're gonna work with for your pattern. Obviously for this video, as we're working with skirts, we don't use this, but I just wanted to make a complete guide on how to fill out your custom sized chart for further videos, and also for you as a base to understand all of this and where the numbers are coming from and how to calculate them. And that's basically all done. If you happen to measure all of the numbers that you need, just keep in mind that those measurements might vary a slight bit from the ones that you calculate. That doesn't matter that much as long as it's just a little bit. So let's say 1 centimeter, around that. That's totally fine. Just keep in mind that all of the calculations are coming from the measurements, the circumference of 3 variables, which are the bust, the waist, and the hip. So all of the measurements will add up in total to those measurements that you took beforehand, regardless if you calculated them or if you decided to measure everything separately. Once you have your size chart done, this is something you can use for that specific person for any pattern that you will make. Just remember that you will have to make a new size chart for every new person you choose to make patterns for. obviously. And with that sheet basically done, we can start the pattern making process. Okay, so I prepared a thicker piece of paper. I have my size chart here, and the first thing we're gonna do is put an addition to our measured sizes. You do that just for it to fit better, because if you would do a skin tight garment, you would not be able to squeeze into it. So we do for our skirt, we do an addition of 2 for our waistline. So that means we don't have a waist of 65, but a waist of 67. And then we do an addition of 4 to our hip line. That means we have a hip of 99. And then we need to calculate how much we need to take in our waist and how to create the side seam. We do that by subtracting the 67 from the 99, and we're gonna come out to 32. And this number we're gonna divide by 2, which is 16, and this number is the waist to hip difference that we need for calculation. So starting off, we need a paper that is wide enough that it can fit half of your hip plus the addition that we put in. So in my case, half of 99, so 49.5. We need to be able to have 49.5 across here, and we have plenty, as you can see. So we're gonna start with a line to your left. In pattern making, the left is always the front and the very right is always the back. We have this line here. We set a point at the very top. This is our waistline. And as you can see here, I am using the German abbreviations just because these are the only ones I know. Just refer to your size chart. You can see all of the abbreviations and the English translation right there. So we're gonna measure downwards around 20 centimeters. You can also measure this if you need to. It's basically the distance from your waistline to your hip line. It's just an average of 20 to 21 centimeters normally. So this is our hip line. And then, as I am making a base pattern, I am using a base length of 60 centimeters, which goes down to around your knees. So this is my knee. We're gonna angle all of those lines to the right. And as you can see here, a ruler with right angles is very, very useful here. We will measure half of your hip to the right because we're using only half sizes. We're just making half of your front and half of your back. Those get cut out in doubles or on the fold, which creates a full skirt in the end. So we're gonna measure to the right on all the lines, half of your hip with additions. So in my case, 49.5, and we do that on all lines. And then we're gonna draw a line on the right. Then we're gonna need a quarter of your hip plus additions, which is in my case 49.5 divided by 2, 24.75 if I'm correct. I am. So 24.75. And now we have 3 lines. As I already said, the left one is the front, so this is the middle front. The middle one is your side seam, and this one to the very right is your middle back. Now we're gonna draw a line, a parallel line to your waistline, which goes up 1 centimeter to 1.5 centimeters. And you do that because as you go to the back, obviously you're round here. So you have to move up with your waistline in order to compensate for the roundness of your buttocks. Then you use half of whatever you went up here and draw a parallel line here, which we're going to use for the darts later on. And you're doing a third of whatever you went up here and draw a parallel line right there. This is 1, this is 1/2, and this is 1/3 coming up from your waistline. Then we need to make the curve for the hip. This we do by calculating. We take this number that we already calculated earlier and we divide it by 2 again in order to have the number that we need to draw this line. I'm gonna make a small table right here because now we're gonna calculate the darts that we put in. So we're gonna use 2 numbers right here. This TA is the 16 that we already calculated. HA is 8 plus or minus 1.5 centimeters. This comes down to how curvy your hip is. Usually, the smaller your waist, the curvier your hip. So it's based on the difference between waist and hip line. So in my case, I'm in the middle, I would say, to curvier, and I would do plus 1 centimeter, so this would be 9. Then we need our front dart, which is also based on the curvature of your hip. Usually you would do 1.5 to 2.5 centimeters. The curvier, the bigger. I am just gonna go with 2. And then you need your back dart. And the back dart is basically just the rest. So subtract this number, add it up, so 11, from this. So that makes a BD of 5. Now 5 is quite big, to be honest, so I would probably play around with the numbers a little bit, probably go up here on this number and just put a 2.5 centimeter dart, and then go down here to a 4.5 centimeter dart. So that is still on the higher side. So normally you would say up until 4.5 centimeters, the back dart is fine. And from this point on, so if you have a dart of 5 centimeters, you would do 2 darts into your pattern, which usually is 0.5 to 1 centimeter smaller than your first dart. I am gonna work with those numbers now. So the HA is what you take out in your waistline at the side seam. And you just take half of your HA, which is in my case 4.5, and you take it out in both directions. So here, and this together is your HA. And then for the placement of your front dart, you take your waist circumference and divide it by 10. In my case, that is 6.5. And you measure to the left from your new side seam point. And this is the middle of your front dart. Your front dart is this number. You divide this number by 2 to create our dart. This is 2.5 in my case. Then you go down here on a 90-degree angle, and this length here is between 8 to 10 centimeters. I just like doing around 9. That's just a good middle point for me. And you just connect all lines right here. And the dart should end in the higher line that we've drawn previously. Now you go to the back side and you divide this length by 2. So that is in my case 12.33 or something. And this is where your back dart lays. You draw a line down as well. This is in between 13 to 15 centimeters. I like to do 14. And this one is done the same way as the front dart. You just divide your back dart number in 2 and then you connect this up again. And this as well should end up in the previously drawn parallel line. Now here, the side curvature of your hip. You need some sort of rounded ruler in order to be able to draw a nice curve of your side seam. And it should end up looking something like this. And now to finish everything up, you just even out those lines, just like this. And that is the basic pattern all done. So you end up with two patterns that look something like this. Obviously, you would need to try out this pattern and fit it to this person in order to see if everything is correct. And that's what we're gonna do right now. To not waste a huge amount of fabric, you don't need to sew the full length of this skirt, as this is just a parallel line down and the human body goes more narrow towards the knee, so you should be fine as long as the hip fits. So for this tryout, I'm just gonna cut it somewhere here and just gonna do the skirt for fitting the upper part and to make sure that this is correct, because that is the main thing you have to look out for and see if it fits. So I'm just gonna use some scrap fabric that I have laying around, and just to make it easier right now, I'm just gonna draw onto the fabric. Obviously you would never do that if you were to like really make the garment. You would never do that. Once we have this, we're just gonna measure down, doesn't matter, I'm just gonna do 20 centimeters. And I'm just gonna cut this out. So this is what our pieces look like, and there's not that much to actually sew. It's pretty straightforward. Just keep in mind that you need to add somewhere some opening in order to be able to get into your garment. So first thing we'll do is sew along the front and the back piece. As I am alone right now and I am fitting this on my own, I will put an opening to the front because that is easier for me to pin close. So I am just gonna sew up until my hip line, because from my hip line on, the curve starts. So this is the point where everything is still the same size. I'm gonna sew the whole length of my back. Once that is done, I close the darts, and before I do that, I mark on the other side the placements of the darts. And then I'm just gonna close it like so. Now my pieces look like this, my back and my front. The only thing that's left to do is put them on top of each other and sew the side seams shut. And you're left with this, which you just turn over, and then you should have something like this. And this we're gonna fit right now. Okay, I just quickly put my skirt onto my dress form. Obviously, if you were to fit this, you fit it on the person that this pattern is made for, respectively. I just went ahead and put it on my dress form in order to be able to show you what fitting would look like. So I kind of hoped for the pattern not to fit correctly, completely, but it kind of does. But I'm still gonna point out small bits and pieces that need to get changed. This is a small little hack that I want to share with you in order to be able to really nicely pin down everything that needs to be taken in or out. Put the skirt on left side up so that all of your seam allowances just show. This way you can just go ahead and pin everything together in a nice, neat way without having to, you know, do a whole bunch of stuff. So the first thing you do is obviously close the opening that you have left, sitting tight to the dress form or to the body itself. So in my case, if you look here, the pin is around 1 centimeter more to the inside of the overall skirt pattern. That is something I will change, and this follows through all the way down to the hemline. That means I can just narrow the whole pattern by 1 centimeter per side, so 2 centimeters in total. Then I check the side seams, if they sit tight, if the curve is correct. And in my case, the curve is almost perfect. The side seams are almost perfect. It's just a matter of 0.25 centimeters or something like that, which you have to take the skirt pattern in. The middle back sits quite nicely. You can also see here the curvature that we did in the waistline is quite nice. I would probably go even a little bit higher here on the side seam just to have a very nice even curvature towards the middle back. And as you can see here, this covers everything quite nicely, so I'm pretty happy with the line right here. Also, the darts seem to be really nice. The length of the dart seems to be fine. The only thing I would change here is just the way I stitch the dart, because obviously this is an edge and you can always curve to the outside a little bit better, and you wouldn't have this small thing sticking out here at the edge of the dart. That is just a matter of me doing it in a sloppy way for this fitting. Then the positioning of the darts in the front, they look quite nice. I'm really happy with those. I wouldn't change them. And overall, this is quite a nice fit. And the only thing that is left to do is basically copy all the changes that you made on the fitted pattern onto your original pattern. So whatever you took in, you transfer onto your pattern. So in my case, that was 1 centimeter in the center front, and then just a small bit around here in this curve, all the way down. And then you continue this line down here parallel. So all that's left to do is basically just cut off the excess and you're done with your basic pattern, which fits. I think I'm gonna cut this video right here. I did not anticipate it to be that long, but of course with this whole custom sized chart and the explanation and calculation and everything, this video got way longer than I expected it to be. My plan for upcoming videos of my basic sewing school series will be that we make a basic pattern and then we will make a variation from that. And this variation is actually something that you decide. Over in my community tab, I will have weekly polls on what kind of variation you want me to do from a topic that I announce the week before at the end of a video. But obviously, as this took a very long time, we're not gonna make a variation of this pattern in this video. No fear, we're gonna do that in my next video. So I hope you learned a lot. I hope you understood this custom size chart. I hope that this is helpful for you for future endeavors into pattern making, and I'm gonna see you next week. Bye guys!
Yeah.